All right, so get ready, everyone, because today we are diving deep, deep into the future of work.
Ooh, sounds exciting.
It is. And actually, you listeners have sent in some super interesting articles.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, comparing how Spotify and Google are kind of tackling this whole idea, this challenge, I guess you could say, of keeping employees happy and productive,
Right.
in this crazy new world of work we're all trying to navigate. I mean, both of these companies are like the giants, the titans, right, of
Sure.
tech. And they're both known for, always pushing the boundaries, innovating, but their methods are, well, how would you describe it?
I think it's safe to say they're taking very different paths to get to the same goal.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's like, think of it as work-life balance
Mm-hmm.
versus work-life integration.
It's such a good point because we're not talking about just clocking in and clocking out anymore.
Right.
It's about how all of work fits into your whole life,
Mm.
not just how to squeeze your life in around work. And then, on top of that, how companies are like supporting employees in creating a fulfilling life overall.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where I think these philosophies from Spotify and Google really diverge.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's start with Spotify, okay? So
Yeah.
they've got this approach they're calling work from anywhere.
Oh, I've heard about this.
Have you heard about it?
Yeah, I've seen articles.
Yeah, or WFA for short. I mean, you can't get much more straightforward than that, right?
It's so funny because they get straight to the point.
Yeah.
And what intrigues me is what's underneath that catchy name, right?
Hmm.
Because it's not just about letting people work from their home office.
Right.
It's about giving employees like complete control
Hmm.
over their location. So, they're talking about like if you want to work from a cafe, go for it.
Wow.
You feel like being productive from, I don't know, a mountain cabin. Be their guest. They're basically saying, we trust you to find the environment that works best for you.
That's amazing. So it's not just about where you work, but it sounds like it's about how you structure your day as well, right? Like having that autonomy to work when you're most productive.
Exactly. Spotify seems to be betting on this whole idea that when employees have control, they're going to be happier, more engaged, and then ultimately more productive.
Makes sense to me. But how do they actually make it work? I mean, doesn't that create like a logistical nightmare, keeping everyone on the same page when people are literally scattered all over the place?
Right. And that's where their focus on providing a consistent employee experience, no matter where you are, comes into play.
Okay.
So Spotify is investing a lot in creating these really robust digital tools and these collaborative platforms.
Okay.
So think virtual offices, shared project management spaces, communication channels that like work seamlessly wherever you are.
Oh, okay. So it's almost like they've created this virtual office that travels with you.
That's such a good analogy, yeah. And then on top of that, there's this program they have, if you've heard of it. It's called All the Feels.
All the feels? Okay, that sounds, well, intriguing for sure.
Right.
I don't know, a little touchy-feely maybe for like a big tech giant.
And that's what's so surprising about Spotify.
Yeah.
It's a comprehensive mental health initiative.
Wow.
It seems like they're really taking their employees' well-being seriously. Like they go above and beyond typical benefits, right?
Right.
They're trying to create this culture that actually prioritizes mental health.
So it's not just about giving employees freedom, it's also about giving them the support to actually handle that freedom and responsibility. That's pretty amazing, actually.
And it's pretty forward-thinking. And, another thing that I thought was interesting was their whole approach to public holidays.
Oh, yeah, tell me about that. I read something about flexible public holidays. How does that work?
So they're basically acknowledging that not everybody celebrates the same holidays or finds meaning in the same, traditions.
Right.
So they allow employees to pick which public holidays are personally meaningful to them.
So, like, if a traditional holiday doesn't really hold any significance for you, you can swap it out for a day that does.
Wow, that's super interesting. It's almost like they're saying, we respect you as a person, not just as, worker B number 352.
Yeah, and it really fits with their overall philosophy of empowerment and
Yeah.
trusting their employees to manage their own time and their well-being.
Yeah, it's pretty radical when you think about it, like compared to how most companies operate.
It is. It's definitely a departure from the traditional corporate structure.
For sure. Okay, so Spotify sounds pretty amazing so far, but I'm curious to hear about Google.
Yeah.
How are they, approaching this whole future of work thing?
So Google has taken a slightly different approach.
Okay.
They have what they're calling a hybrid model,
Okay.
where most employees are expected to spend 3 days in the office
Okay.
and then 2 days working remotely.
So a bit more structure than Spotify's work from anywhere in the world approach.
Yeah.
But I can see the logic there. I mean, Google is massive. Right.
Like incredibly complex projects and teams.
Tons of moving parts.
Yeah. So maybe that level of like face-to-face interaction is, I don't know, maybe it's just necessary for a company that size. What do you think?
I think that's their thinking. They seem to believe that face-to-face collaboration is really crucial for sparking creativity and building those strong bonds, which are essential for a company of that scale.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And plus, let's be honest, those Google offices are legendary.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, nap pods, gourmet food, gyms. It's like a playground for adults.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to get caught up in all those perks, but it's important to remember that they're like strategically designed their offices, right, to foster this sense of community
Yeah.
and well-being. They want to make the office a destination, right? A place where people are actually energized and excited to come together.
That's smart. So it's not just about getting people back in the office. It's about making the office a place where they actually want to be. That's really clever. So what else is Google doing, to create this, I don't know, kind of innovative work environment?
Well, one thing that really stands out to me is their company-wide embrace of what they call a culture of experimentation.
Experimentation. Okay, tell me more. What does that actually look like in practice?
So it's really about fostering this mindset where employees are like encouraged to take risks and try new things and not be afraid to fail.
Interesting.
Because they believe that innovation comes from, pushing boundaries.
Yeah.
And that requires a certain level of comfort with the unknown, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Not knowing what the outcome's going to be.
It makes sense. So it's not just about the ping pong tables and the free snacks. It's about creating a culture where failure is seen as a learning opportunity, not a setback.
Precisely.
That's cool.
They want their employees to feel safe, taking risks, trying new things, knowing they won't be penalized for, well-intentioned failures.
Right.
And I think that type of psychological safety can be like incredibly motivating and can lead to those like groundbreaking innovations.
I bet. It must be pretty awesome to work for a company that values, that kind of boldness and creativity, even if it means that things don't always work out perfectly.
Right, exactly.
But of course, even the most innovative companies, they still need to provide that support for their employees, right? What does that look like at Google?
So Google definitely has a robust employee support system, but I think what sets them apart is their approach, like it's data-driven.
Okay. You mean like how they're tracking all those metrics and using that information to figure out what's working and what's not?
Exactly. So they track metrics, conduct surveys, use all that data to like constantly evaluate and improve all their programs.
That's a really smart approach, actually. So they're not just throwing perks at the problem. They're actually trying to understand, what employees need and then tailor those programs accordingly.
Yeah, and it's very analytical, which makes sense for their data-driven culture.
Right. Okay, so we've got Spotify with their work from anywhere philosophy, emphasizing flexibility, individual choice. And then we've got Google with this hybrid model, this data-driven approach, more focused on structure and in-person collaboration. So two very different ways of trying to achieve the same goal.
Yeah.
Happy employees, productive employees.
Exactly. And that's what makes this comparison so fascinating, right?
Totally. It's like they're conducting these two giant experiments in real time, and we're like getting a front row seat.
Exactly.
This is where things get really interesting. What do you say we do a head-to-head comparison and see how these models stack up?
Okay, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay.
Okay, so I think a good place to start our comparison is with the most obvious difference, right?
Yeah.
Flexibility.
Okay.
Spotify's WFA model. It's all about giving employees the power to choose, right? They get to decide where they work, when they work, and how they work.
Wow. It's like they've completely tossed out the old rule book and said, like, hey, here are the tools you need. Here's the support. Now go make magic happen. But I'm curious, does that much freedom ever feel overwhelming for people? Like, how do you stay focused and organized with that much autonomy?
Right. And, that's a good question. And it probably depends on the individual.
Yeah, for sure.
But that kind of brings us to another key difference, which is autonomy.
Oh, okay.
Spotify's whole WFA model is built on a foundation of trust and autonomy.
Yeah.
They expect their employees to manage their own time, their own workload
Yeah.
with very minimal supervision.
Wow. That sounds like a dream come true for some people, but for others, I can imagine it could be a little bit daunting. Maybe they prefer a bit more structure.
Right.
So it probably comes down to personality and work style, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's where Google's hybrid model
Okay.
might appeal to those who, maybe thrive in a more structured environment. You get those set office days, but you still have flexibility within that framework. You still get to choose when you work from home. But those 3 days in the office provide a rhythm
Right.
and also that built-in opportunity for face-to-face interaction.
I think it comes down to whether you're the kind of person who thrives on complete independence or whether you prefer a little bit of routine and that in-person connection with colleagues. So what do you think, listeners? Are you go with the flow, or do you like a bit of predictability in your work week?
Or maybe some kind of a blend of both.
Right. Maybe a little bit of both. It's interesting to think about, isn't it? Like, as those lines between, work and life get blurrier, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution anymore.
Right, exactly.
And that's a good thing, I think.
I agree.
So much more freedom to choose what works best for you.
Yeah.
And, speaking of fit, we have to talk about the actual workspace itself, right?
Yes, definitely.
Like, you've got Google spending all this money, creating these incredible physical spaces, designed to draw people in. And then you have Spotify, who's basically saying, like, work from anywhere and we'll give you the support to make it work.
Right. It's such a stark contrast.
It is.
Yeah.
So on the Google side, they're really putting a lot of emphasis on those offices, the perks, the whole experience.
Yes, sure.
To try to, encourage those in-person connections and collaboration.
Right. And they really believe that those carefully curated offices with all the perks, they're crucial, right, for fostering that sense of community and well-being.
Yeah.
And I mean, let's be honest, the idea of working in a place with nap pods and gourmet meals,
Oh, come on, sign me up.
it's pretty tempting.
It is.
But remember, it's not just about all those, bells and whistles.
Right.
They're really using those perks to cultivate an environment where, employees are supported, their well-being is prioritized, and to foster those, chance encounters that can spark creativity and those new innovations, right?
Yeah.
They see those offices as, an investment in their employees
Yeah.
and the future of the company.
So they're trying to create a place where people genuinely want to be rather than feeling like they have to be there.
Exactly.
That's a huge difference, isn't it?
It is a big difference.
In terms of, just the overall vibe and the feeling that you get when you go to work.
Right.
And then on the Spotify side, it's more about providing that consistent experience no matter where you're physically located, right? They're investing in those tools and support systems to make working from anywhere,
Seamless.
Exactly, and productive.
It's like they're saying, work from your couch, work from a coffee shop, work from a mountaintop. If that's what inspires you, we're going to make sure you have everything you need to get the job done.
Yeah, and I love that because it really puts the emphasis on, trusting the employee to create the environment that works best for them.
Right, and they're betting on the fact that employees will be the happiest, the most productive when they have that freedom to choose.
It's like two totally different philosophies about what it means to work.
It is.
Right, one is grounded in the physical space, and the other is about creating this virtual space that's not tied to a particular location.
It's fascinating.
It is. It's so fascinating. Okay, so regardless of how they approach the workspace, both companies seem to be really committed to employee well-being.
Yes, very much so.
But their methods are pretty different, right?
They are.
So you've got Spotify with the All the Feels program and those flexible holidays. They're putting mental health and those personal values front and center.
Yeah, they're acknowledging that, a happy employee is a productive employee.
Exactly.
And that well-being isn't just about your physical health.
And I love that because it's finally, a company that gets it, right?
Right.
They're acknowledging that people have lives outside of work, and you can't just shut that off when you clock in.
Exactly.
So it's refreshing.
It is.
And then you've got Google with their whole data-driven approach, tracking those metrics, analyzing those trends, really trying to figure out what's working and what's not.
Precisely. They're constantly gathering data, analyzing trends, trying to improve those support programs.
So it's a very systematic and scientific approach.
It is.
Which makes sense for them.
It does.
Given their whole company culture.
Absolutely.
So it's like Spotify is about creating that culture of trust and autonomy.
Right.
And then Google is about providing that data-driven support.
Mm-hmm. And resources.
Like two sides of the same coin, both trying to create a positive work environment.
Exactly. And I think that's a key takeaway.
Yeah.
There's no one right way to approach employee well-being.
Right.
What matters is that companies make it a priority.
Yeah.
And figure out what works for their employees.
Yeah.
And their specific culture.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we've talked about flexibility, autonomy, workspace, employee well-being. I mean, these are all super important factors when we're thinking about the future of work.
Right.
But there's one area I think we haven't touched on yet.
What's that?
Company culture. You know, like how do these companies compare when it comes to just the overall vibe, you know, and the values that they promote?
That's a great point. And company culture is huge.
It is.
For employee satisfaction.
Yeah.
It can make or break a company's success in attracting top talent.
Right, because it's not just about the perks or the policies. It's about, I don't know, it's about that feeling you get when you walk in the door or you log on to your virtual office, in Spotify's case.
Right.
So how would you describe the cultures at Spotify and Google?
Okay, well, both companies are known for being innovative and forward-thinking.
Yeah.
But their cultures are definitely distinct in some key ways.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Let's start with Spotify.
Oh.
They have a really flat organizational structure, minimal hierarchy, lots of emphasis on individual empowerment.
It sounds like a very entrepreneurial and agile kind of environment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It attracts people who are independent, self-motivated, and who are comfortable in fast-paced, ever-changing environments.
Yeah, that makes sense given their whole work from anywhere philosophy.
Totally.
It takes a certain type of person to thrive in that kind of setup.
Absolutely.
What about Google? How would you describe their culture?
So Google's culture is also really focused on innovation.
Yeah.
But they have a slightly different approach.
Okay.
They're a little more structured than Spotify.
Okay.
With more emphasis on that data-driven decision-making.
Okay.
And a strong focus on collaboration and teamwork.
So maybe a little less move fast and break things and a little more measure twice, cut once.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
They value data analysis, you know, a rigorous approach to problem solving. And they believe that the best ideas come from teams working together, kind of like leveraging each other's strengths.
Okay, so Spotify is all about individual empowerment and agility, while Google is focused on collaborative innovation and making those data-driven decisions.
Exactly.
Fascinating how those different values play out.
It is fascinating.
In their whole approach to the future of work.
Yeah, and it shows there's no one right culture.
Right.
The best culture is one that aligns with a company's values, their goals, and the type of work they're doing.
Absolutely. And it's also important to remember company culture, it's constantly evolving. It's not something that's static, right?
Right, exactly.
So as the nature of work changes, those cultures at those companies are going to change too.
It's true.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see how they adapt and evolve over the years.
For sure. Okay, so I think we've covered a lot of ground with this head-to-head comparison.
Absolutely.
We've looked at flexibility, autonomy, workspace, employee well-being, and now company culture. It's been a fascinating deep dive.
It has.
Into these two very different approaches.
Two very different approaches.
To the future of work.
To the future of work.
But before we wrap things up, I want to bring it back to you, the listener.
Yes, definitely.
What stood out to you from what we discussed today?
What resonated with you?
What kind of workplace do you think you would thrive in?
And as the nature of work keeps evolving, what do you think the future holds?
Yeah, these are big questions.
Big questions.
And we don't have all the answers.
We don't.
But we do know one thing. The future of work, it's being shaped right now.
It is.
And we, as individuals and as a society, you know, we have a role to play.
We do.
In shaping that future. So let's keep this conversation going.
Yeah, share your thoughts with us.
Yeah.
Your ideas, your dreams for the future of work.
Yeah, and don't keep them to yourself.
Right.
Share them with your friends, your colleagues, your employers. Be part of the conversation.
Yeah, because the future of work isn't something that's just going to be handed down. It's something we create together.
That's such a powerful point.
It is.
We're not just passive bystanders, you know.
Right.
We're active participants. And we have the power to shape the future that we want to see.
Absolutely. So let's use that power wisely.
Yeah.
Let's learn from companies like Spotify and Google.
Yeah.
Let's experiment, innovate, and create a future of work that works for everyone.
Wow. I mean, we have really gone deep today.
We have.
On Spotify and Google and their whole, like, approaches to the future of work.
It's fascinating to see how they're, both tackling these big questions
Yeah.
and having success in these very unique ways.
It really just shows you that. Like, there's no one right answer, is there?
No.
When it comes to creating a workplace where people can thrive,
It's true.
what works for Spotify might not work for Google.
Right, exactly.
And what works for them might not work for, I don't know, every other company out there.
Exactly.
So it's not about saying one model is better than the other. It's about recognizing that, like, the future of work is all about, I don't know, like, customizing and being flexible and finding that perfect fit for each individual company and, the people who work there.
And what's so exciting is that we're seeing this unfold in real time.
Right.
These companies are experimenting, they're innovating, they're constantly evolving.
Yeah, it's like they're both on these parallel paths,
Yeah.
going up the same mountain, but they're taking different routes.
Different routes, totally.
And we get to watch and learn.
Exactly. And what's even more exciting is that we're not just spectators, are we?
No, we're all part of this.
You're all participants.
Exactly. So as work continues to change, and it's definitely changing rapidly.
It is.
What do you think, listener? What aspects of these models do you think are going to become like the new normal?
Yeah. Will we see more companies embracing that radical flexibility?
Yeah.
Like Spotify.
Or will it be that hybrid model? The blend of, in-person and remote, is that going to become the dominant one?
Yeah.
And what about those Google perks, right?
I know, right?
Are nap pods and gourmet meals just going to become, like, standard in every office?
Right. Or will the focus shift to that consistent experience no matter where you are?
Right, like Spotify, I don't know, it's so hard to predict.
It is impossible to say for sure.
But one thing's for sure, the future of work is being shaped right now.
It is.
And we all have a voice in that conversation.
So what do you think, listeners? What kind of workplace would, help you thrive?
Yeah, what are your non-negotiables,
Yeah, what are you willing to compromise on?
Yeah, what are your hopes for the future of work?
And, don't just keep those thoughts to yourself.
Yeah.
Share them, talk about them.
Yeah, with your friends, your family, your colleagues.
Yeah.
Be part of the conversation.
Because the future of work, it's not something that's going to be decided for us.
Right.
It's something we create together.
That's such a powerful thought,
It is.
We're not just sitting on the sidelines watching this happen. We are active participants.
Oh, you are.
And we can shape the future that we want.
Absolutely. So let's use that power wisely.
Yes.
Let's learn from companies like Spotify and Google.
Yes.
And experiment and innovate and create a future of work that truly works for everybody.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And with that, we're going to wrap up our deep dive into Spotify and Google's very different approaches to work.
It's been fun.
It has been fun. It's been fascinating.
Yes.
Hopefully, it's been a little bit inspiring for you listeners as well.
Definitely. And you know what? The conversation doesn't end here.
No, it doesn't.
Keep thinking about these things.
Yeah.
Keep exploring. Keep diving deep into these ideas.
Yes. Until next time, stay curious.